All right, so today we are going to build upon our last lesson. In our last lesson, we calculated measures of tendency and measures of dispersion. We used a calculator to help us do the actual like squaring and subtraction and square rooting and whatnot, but the rest of it we did by hand. We had to show work for everything. Now, a lot of these statistics, your graphing calculator will actually calculate for you, which is an excellent way to quickly check your work to make sure you did it right. Now, for most of these things, when we get to the quiz or the test, you're going to have to show work. But this is an excellent way to check it. So when you're doing the sum of the squared differences to find the variance, this is a good way to check whether you've done it correctly because there's so many pieces of data that you might be using. Also, if we do end up with lots and lots of data, it would take forever to individually calculate for like 50 or 100 or more pieces of data. So for those instances, we would need a calculator. Okay, so our goals for today, we want to be able to find the measures of central tendency and dispersion using our graphing calculator, and then we want to be able to use those quartile values that the calculator is going to help us find to create a box and whisker plot. So I know you've done box and whisker plots before, but people don't use them a lot, and so they forget how to use them. And it's very important that you know how to set one up and to read one because they are a way to very quickly organize data. So I have the directions here for how to find stats in your calculator. And we are going to use the data in example 1. So first thing that you should do is you're going to enter your data into list 1. So if you remember back when we did our quadratic regression and whatnot, we had to enter data into lists. So you're going to press the stat button and you're going to choose edit. And then under list 1, if for some reason you don't have a list 1, then just whatever your first list is, you are going to enter the data that is here in example 1. If it appears twice, you need to enter it twice. So enter each value, so hit 43, enter, 46, enter, 47, enter, so on and so forth. So go ahead and pause this for just a minute so that you have time to actually try this on your calculator because that's the only way you know if you understand it. So go ahead and enter all of this data into your list 1 and then unpause it when you are ready to continue. And one thing that I suggest with this data is either mark off as you go or possibly just you could count the number of pieces of data just to make sure you didn't skip one. There are 22 boys basketball scores here, so you should, when you are finished, your last item, the 76, should be the 22nd entry in that list. So if it's not, you know you've either punched one too many in or left something out. Okay, so once you have entered all the data, you can hit your second and then the mode button to quit out of the data entry, or you can just simply go to step 3. Now to find the statistics, we're going to press the stat button again, but instead of going to edit, we're going to scroll right to the calc, which is the same place where we did regression, and it's actually the first choice. So choice 1, so you can either press 1 or you can press enter. One var stats means one variable statistics. We've got one list here that we are using. So then press enter. And then your screen, before you see any of this, if you have the older calculator, you have to tell it the list if you're using something other than list 1. Now the newer calculators will prompt you to do that, but the old ones will not. So if you're using something other than your first list, you would need to tell it that, and remember that you can name the list by a couple different ways, but the easiest way to name lists is to press the second button and then whichever number it is. So if you want it to say L1, press second 1. If you want it to say L2, press second 2. This is useful because if you want to keep data in there, like if you make a mistake on something and you can't figure it out, you need to keep the data so that I can help you figure it out. which means you'd have to use a different list. So once you tell it what list to use, you can press enter. And these values right here aren't the actual numbers that you should see. This is just a screenshot I found on the internet. This is not our actual data, but I'm using this to show you what you should see. So the very top thing that you should see is X bar, which stands for your sample mean. Mu is the population mean, which means if we have all of the data. So it uses X bar because it figures that we are using a sample. So X bar is the sample mean. And when we are looking at that, I'm going to write them in here. So this is the mean. This is the sum. Then sum x squared there, we don't usually use. This one right here, the SX, this is the sample standard deviation. This sigma x is the population standard deviation, so they're estimating that based upon the sample. N is the number of data entries. So again, you can tell this isn't our data because we had 22 pieces of data and this had 10. Then if you press down, notice that it has the arrow here. That's telling you that there's more if you scroll down. If you scroll down, you can see N again, and again, this is a different set of data. Min X, this is the minimum value, so the lowest. Q1, that is your lower quartile, which, and you've learned this before, but just to briefly review, that's the median of the lower half. MED is the median. Q3 is the upper quartile, which is the median of the upper half of the data. And then, of course, the max is the maximum value, the highest data value that you see. So our numbers obviously look different than that, and now you can check, hopefully, if you entered these correctly, you should get the same things I did. So now that we know how to read all of these, we can fill in each of the following. So the mean right here, again, it's in this place, but it's not this number. On your calculator, look, and hopefully your mean says 57, and if we round it to the nearest tenth, we say 57.3. So if you did not get 57.3 for your X bar, you need to go back to your data entry screen to the stat edit. There's a mistake somewhere. Check it. You should get 57.3. The median value, you have to scroll down to get that one. The MED is 56. Mode, this one, notice it says range and mode have to be found separately. You're not going to get those from your calculator. So mode is what appears most often. So it looks like I've got 247s, I've got 251s, I've got 255s, got 359. So these are the winners so far. And that is it. So 3 is the winner. That's what appears most often. So the mode is 59. Range. Again, you have to do that separately. Range is the max minus the min, which is on our data. It's over here. So that's in our screen. So find the max. It says it's 76. The minimum is 43, which you could also get because I was very nice and put this data in order to begin with. So max minus min, in this case, 76 minus 43 is 33. The standard deviation, and if you take a statistics course, they will specify which one we want. Now, it just says boys basketball scores. We don't really have enough information to know if these are all of the scores or not, if there were more than 22 games or if 22 games was it. Are we looking at just 1 year? So we don't really have enough information to know which one is appropriate, whether this is a sample or whether this is the population. So if it's the sample, again, the sample mean is right here. It's got the SX, so look at the SX on your calculator screen. It should be about 9.7. The sigma X, again, this looks SX. Sigma X is the population mean, and it's about 9.4. So in this case, because we don't really have enough information to know which to use, I would accept either of them. Now, I listed the median twice, and that was for a reason, because what I have on this right side, the lower quartile, we have to fill in still. That is Q1, it's 50. Q3 is the upper quartile, which is 61. The reason why I have the median twice, I have it over here because it's a measure of central tendency, the mean, the median, and the mode. The range and the standard deviation, those are both measures of dispersion. So what's over here, and we'll say this, these are measures of central tendency. These are measures of dispersion. So we have those over on the left side for a reason, because that's how we can describe the center and the spread of our data. What's over here are the numbers that we need for my box and whisker. Now, if we were doing this by hand, remember that the median is the middle number. So if I crossed off the first 6, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then I take 3 more on each side, 3 more, 1 more, 1 more. I get to the middle and see I've got 2 scores, so the median would be 55 plus 57 divided by 2, which is how they got 56. This, right 56, separates the data into 2 halves. So my median is 56. Lower quartile is the median of just the lower half. So if I'm looking here and I cross off, let's start with 4 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I've got 5, and the lower quartile you can see is 50, which is what I got here. So then do the same thing on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 61 is my Q3. So we just checked their work, it is correct. Now we need to talk about what that means. What that means when you have a box and whisker plot is it divides the data into quarters. When you do a box and whisker plot, the first thing that you do is you label a line, a number line like this, with numbers that make sense for your scale. So here my lowest number is 43, my highest number is 76. You want to go at least a little below the lowest and a little above the highest, and you need to count by something consistent. So what I did is I started at 40 and I went up to 80 and I counted by 4s. Now you can label all of them if you want. If you want to only label every other, that'd be okay with me too. But sometimes it's easier to just label all of them so that you don't accidentally mess up the numbers that go in there. So there, I was counting by 4s, and again, if you don't pick the same thing as me or your neighbor, that's usually okay. Just make sure you go a little above and a little below. When you make a box and whisker plot, we make the box first, and the box is made from Q1, the median, and Q3. These are all lines. They make the box like this. So Q3 goes on this end, Q1 goes on this end, median goes this way. They're not always going to be evenly spaced. Your box might look like this, where the median is way over here. That's okay. So here, for our box, lower quartile is 50, so that's going to be halfway between 48 and 52. The median is 56, so it goes right here. and the upper quartile is 61. So this one's pretty evenly spaced. It's a little more to the right than to the left, but again, that's not important. Then, that's the box. The whiskers are the min and the max. So the box is showing the central tendencies. The whiskers is showing dispersion. So the max is 76, and you always put your dots for the min and max like in the middle of where the box would be. The minimum is 43, and you connect them. That's why it's called whiskers, because you connect them to the box. Now, you should label these as well, because sometimes, depending on what you're counting by, you can't always tell if it's exactly or if it's a little above or a little below. So label them so that you know the actual numbers. What this box and whisker plot does is it divides the data into quarters. That means that 25% of the scores were between 43 and 50. Another 25% of the scores were between 50 and 56. Another 25% of the scores were between 56 and 61. And another 25% of the scores were between 61 and 76. So you can see that the spaces aren't the same width. It's not like a histogram where the first whisker has to be the same width as the last one. This is a way bigger range between 61 and 76 than between 43 and 50. But that doesn't matter because that's where 25% of our data fell. So you look at these things when you want to rank yourself with percentiles. So if you want to know, did I score better than average, so to speak, means is your score better than 50%? Well, the first 50% would be here. So if you were above 56, you'd be in the top half. Below 56 would be in the lower half. So that is how we read our box and whisker plot. Hopefully it all comes back to you. Again, please, please, please make sure you know how to enter this data. So if you didn't get it right, go back and fix it and make sure you can get all these numbers. Make sure you know how to read these screens, because I cannot help you with that. You need to know what all of those different symbols stand for, at least the ones that you are going to need. So that is your information, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. I am out of sayings, so I need some new ones starting tomorrow. Peace out.